right. So, good morning to everybody. Welcome to Thursday and another episode of Engineering the Markets. My name is Jared, and it is December 16th, 2021. So, markets overall had a positive reaction to our FOMC meeting yesterday. We got information from the federal chair that 2022 would encompass 3 rate hikes, and we are seeing that they are being indicating that they're looking at an acceleration of their asset buybacks, or the tapering of their asset buybacks. Apologies. So the market overall was sort of looking for some confirmation of previous statements, and also looking to see whether the inflation that has been reported through different metrics of the market, CPI and PPI, if these metrics were going to force the Fed's hand and essentially accelerate some of their initial plans. Now, while we are seeing them announce that they will be accelerating the tapering program, the market overall was seeing more of a risk-on appetite for some of the statements for next year, and we saw a fairly bullish reaction inside of that statement's completion. Now, when we look at our S&Ps, and we'll start off with the SPX, it's worth mentioning that during yesterday's session, the market recovered back to Friday session highs. So throughout some of this week's trade, we've seen sort of the initial drawdown. We also saw that gapping structure, which was repaired. And now with this new information, we're postured relatively bullish near all-time highs. And as we see with the overnight session, market was able to continue that sort of drift into the morning pre-market, as we are hitting all-time highs inside of the ES, along with the S&Ps making a pre-market all-time high as of this morning. So we're also in a technical breakout as far as the overall daily trading range that we've been somewhat trapped within for the past couple of sessions. Interesting structure here if you sort of identify the head and shoulder structure that's allowing for this breakout. This isn't necessarily a normal pattern, or this inverse head and shoulder structure, I should say. This isn't necessarily a normal pattern for new all-time high breakouts. You often see these at the end of price patterns near the lows in the case of the inverse head and shoulders. But it's indicative that the market has back tested some key support areas below before this breakout. And that structure, we're looking for that to essentially hold for the rest of the year and facilitate what most people are looking for, which is, of course, the sort of Santa Claus rally, or the end of year sort of thrust into new all-time highs and new value for the market. So as we shift into our SPY, we simply comment on the fact that we've done full range transitions at this point in time. We've obviously back tested our previous all-time highs. We've come back to our 50 period during that correction. We've seen the sort of elevated thrust back into resistance, the backfill of the structural gap that was left in its wake. Once again, the SPY with that lower wick, this is not actual price action. It is structurally still considered a gap. And then now with this final sort of thrust back into previous resistance and the pre-market session looking at new all-time highs, we're simply going to look at today and Friday session to see, can the market continue to hold this posture and confirm this breakout with our first daily close above this daily trading range. Worth mentioning that we had sort of a very timid look above and fail, which allowed for that gap fill to be completed. But ultimately, today's session is going to be much more indicative of as to whether or not the market wants to continue pressing higher, or will we have more sort of stall and overall lack of follow through and conviction. Obviously, yesterday's session showcasing more of that bullish thrust, as there was a fairly high correlation coefficient in this market being bought to new all-time highs. So the question is, do we see this across multiple markets? And I would say that in the short term, the answer is yes. When we look at our NASDAQ, we noted that the NASDAQ was not postured in the same areas as the overall S&Ps. It was a bit of a laggard during this most recent correction. And as we were coming into that 400 psychological print, market was putting up lots of resistance at this point in intraday session. Basically, some of our largest shorts and our more tight risk or well-defined risks for the NASDAQ have occurred at this price level. As we are starting to get more bullish, and as we look at the NASDAQ coming into that retracement resistance, this was that area where ultimately if the NASDAQ wanted to break through 400, it would be nice to see this retracement area essentially fail for the first time. We were seeing some upper rejection here, and essentially because it was not postured in the same sort of range structure, we needed a bit of a different indicator or trend line to anticipate the move. And as we look sort of a little at the intraday session or the pre-market session, we'll just note that we're still testing the 400 area. Once again, NASDAQ is not at all-time highs, but we saw swift recovery inside of key tech and consumer discretionary names. So the bullish posture, if it continues, can certainly lead this product much higher. And then finally, last but not least, the IWM. Now, once again, we were looking at a key level inside of the IWM to hold as possible support. We were analyzing one of our weaker overall index products and noting that if this market did wish to go bullish, we simply needed a risk level to trade against. Now, as of yesterday's session, we can see that sort of bullish volume return near key lows. We also know that this is sort of an upper support area inside of the dominant trading range. And if you look at this candle structure and how we actually breached previous lows, the perception here is one of a false breakdown, essentially a look below and failure to go lower, as not only did we recover swiftly with volume, but we closed near session highs. What this does is essentially creates a bit of a short-term trap for those looking to continue the downward trend. And oftentimes the targets for these types of trades are simply the range highs that the initial drawdown began from. Once again, just confirming the idea that this market has a larger dominant range, but in between there are shorter range opportunities that can be taken advantage of. Now, one idea to kind of structure some of the bullish activity yesterday is that a lot of stocks saw that correlated buying. Essentially, no matter what name I pull up, we're going to see some similar bullish activity. Some, of course, being near all-time highs or near relative highs. The likes of Apple and Microsoft just kind of showcasing that tech strength coming back into the market. Microsoft able to hold its 50 period. We saw stocks like Facebook or Meta coming through a sort of congested moving average area and ultimately breaking away from a possible inflection point, a possible pivot area in the market. Now that this particular underlying is above all of the key moving averages, we're going to be looking to see whether the daily uptrend and the structure of a strong uptrend with sort of your moving averages in alignment can start to form moving forward. Obviously, you need to get above them for that to first happen, but you also need them to realign themselves with your short, medium, and long-term trending moving averages. Same idea with Google, of course, holding the 50. Now, there are some other names that were postured a bit more weakly on, or I would say threatened inside of this market. We have stocks like Tesla. Now, we know Tesla has this sort of impulsive or continuation gap that broke it away from previous all-time highs and essentially established a large trading range that the stock has been trading inside of for the past couple of weeks. It's also worth noting that over this downdraft that Tesla has been having, there's been sort of a structural channel. Essentially noting that while channel-based trading is a bit more challenging, you don't have the sort of horizontal price levels to base stop losses on. You often have to just respond to bullish activity near channel lows, assess the sort of downside risk at that area. And then ultimately for shorts, you're looking for that full channel transition. And once again, just shorting near the highs, hoping for relative lows and ultimately that channel low to be retested. In this case, the channel is a downtrending channel. So Tesla overall is still trying to sort of gain its ground. But in between this activity, you can find opportunity to have risk-defined trades. And once the structure forms, that becomes sort of the dominant trading thesis for that time until we get some additional information. So Tesla, one of our weaker names, but as you can see, this sort of back and forth oscillation, stronger buys near the low, stronger sells near the channel high, and looking for this to make a channel transition. If you are bullish this market, a stock like Tesla making a move from the lower bounds, in this case, let's assume something like 1125, that of course adds a lot of re-established market cap to the S&Ps and the NASDAQ. So putting all this together, it's the idea that yes, the market was bought quite heftily yesterday. I'll just showcase Amazon as well. Strong, impulsive buying candle near sort of key psychological support. We were coming into this area, and this is a bit of a harder stock to analyze as we've had lots of range-bound trading, but we're looking at things like 200 period holding as support and just sort of negating what was structurally looking to be a possible breakdown near this moving average. So seeing all this strength return, you can ask yourself, what stocks do I want to be focused on moving forward? And what stocks may be starting to hit their inflection points, albeit we haven't quite seen the signal that that move is complete. So one area to kind of keep on focus is the ones that have been defensive leading into this announcement and continue inside of their bullish direction. The likes of consumer staples, once again, making new all-time highs, but ultimately having a bit of a accelerated upper thrust. This is not necessarily to be fought, but we're looking for the end of this initial wave and the eventual correction as profit taking begins. Same idea with utilities coming into all-time highs over the next couple of sessions. Ideally, we'll be looking if that provides resistance or if this will ultimately just breach this area without much challenge. And then finally, our healthcare sector. This sector actually made new all-time highs on yesterday's session. Once again, a bit more of a defensive sector, but we've seen sort of the bullish thrust coming into this meeting and into this weekly session. Yesterday's candle, of course, very strong and very optimistic to the upside, but often these moves from low to high can be a bit exhaustive for the dominant players, in this case, the bulls. So just seeing if this market is ready to consolidate these gains before continuing further. And of course, if you're missing these moves, just understand that these are extended in regards to their directionality. They can continue higher, but the risk profile gets worse and worse as this market continues. You counter that with the recovery in tech. You counter that with some bullish return into more consolidative areas like financials. Pull this back into a single year. And energy trying to hold near its relative lows. And then as we looked at Tesla and Amazon, once again, that channel structure, just noting that a market can be in a downtrend, but you can have reactionary buys and sells as this market transitions through its correction. These are often short-term plays, but understand that they are still edge-based strategies as we see the markets oscillate through a relative channel. You're looking at buys near the lows, sells near the highs. And if you ever get a breach of the channel, it's worth respecting for that time until you get a signal that we're ready to return. Sort of that false breakout look near the highs. So to wrap all that up, the idea from yesterday, and sort of an idea that I posed to the chat room, is any stock, regardless of what sector, what area of the market, whether it be, let's say, some speculative growth, seeing some return, lots of in-play stocks that used to have a lot of bullish momentum coming into lower support zones. You can look at things like some of our EV names, especially with the likes of Tesla hitting some extremes on yesterday's session. Any stock that is looking to break yesterday's low, it's indicative that that stock wasn't really being bought in the same way as some of the stronger candidates we've just looked through. Essentially, because the market was so correlated on yesterday's afternoon session, a lot of stocks had the same bullish thrust into the close, some of which look better than others. You could be looking at things that have been beaten down for quite a while. They may be getting into some relative value zones, some areas where the market isn't necessarily ready to recover to new all-time highs, but looking for sort of that weekly lower high, maybe sort of having a risk level to trade against, like and Square having some of those looks, along with stocks that were seeing some bullish activity prior and possibly coming into a more conservative entry for bullish plays, the likes of higher lows in the case of Disney. All right, so an interesting phenomenon that's occurring. I wanted to point it out as we had some success on last week's session with a different name. But one of our stronger healthcare names has been Pfizer as of late. And as we can see, Pfizer has not only breached all-time highs, I believe this, double check just to be sure. But yes, we're of course at all-time highs. We're seeing bullish volume continue this uptrend. And once again, the bullish thrust in yesterday's session, leaving a wide range sort of buying candle near the highs. So as with any sort of extension candle like this, it can ultimately be a bit exhaustive in the short term that can lead to a bit of consolidation moving forward. But more so than that, if we look at Pfizer from the option market side of the things, and we just mark off the expected move for the week, Pfizer came into this week with approximately about a, let's just say a $1.5 expected move. We closed Friday at 52.78, and our expected move high was about 54.33. Obviously the downside 51.23. So we're looking at $1.50 expected move on the week. It's worth mentioning that Pfizer's option market not only got this very wrong, But ultimately, we're seeing what is often referred to as a standard deviation move or a multiple standard deviation move outside of this range. This is what's referred to as an expected move breach. And in the case of Pfizer, since we are closing yesterday at about 59, if we look at 54.30s and extend multiple 1.5 points outside of that price level, you can see that we're approximately 3 to 4 times the standard deviation move that was predicted for the stock. Now, whenever this occurs, this is where option markets often are forced into different ways to hedge directional bias risk. The idea revolves around the concept of a gamma squeeze, or essentially having firms who buy and sell contracts to retail and institutional traders. Those firms carry directional risks because they are ultimately the ones holding the sold calls in the case of a bullish gamma squeeze. And they have to protect their upside risk by by buying the underlying stock. So when you are net delta negative, you buy back the shares in the case of these market making firms to keep yourself delta neutral. Just like Apple last week, we had a similar phenomenon where, as we're getting into Friday's session, the market was unable to sort of pull back down into normal standard deviation ranges. Even a drawdown to sort of a 2 times extension would be manageable for a lot of these market making firms. But Apple did not do that. It stayed elevated. And as we got into Thursday's session, we had sort of the initial parabolic run that led Apple into its current all-time highs. I wanted to call out Pfizer because we're seeing some similar activity here. Not only is this stock being traded very heavily on the option market side, you can see the likes of about 500,000 calls on yesterday's session, the likes of 180,000 puts. Looking at the sizzle index, you can see that this is a bit elevated for this particular stock relative to the past 5 days. So yesterday's session, a lot more interest and open interest came into this market. And as we look at the series that is expiring this week, we can also sort of note where some of the higher open interest sits for this name. Noting that a lot of upper call volume has been opened and remains available for the rest of the week, along with a bit of a sort of a volume shelf leading us into this possible 60 print. So while this may not be the same sort of volatility as a stock like Apple, you're going to not necessarily see $1 to $2 moves inside of the matter of a couple of minutes. Pfizer is positioned in the same way as Apple was last week. The potential for gamma exposure and for that hedging risk to enter this market still remains quite high. And what this means is if you're trading Pfizer today and tomorrow, and you start to see it go into more of that parabolic phase, understand that there is hedging activity that is driving the stock higher, usually in those moments. That parabolic sort of shift and that hedging dynamic, which you'll see with an accelerated tape and essentially a lack of order, level 2 order, you'll basically see people just driving the price higher into these key strikes. Whenever that happens, it can be quite challenging to play the opposite direction. Not only do you not get much follow through, but you'll actually see people buying into more buying, leading into that momentum play and that hedge, leading it into these higher strikes. So a bit of an analysis of what's going on with Pfizer as of now. It's mostly a dynamic of this market. Understand that it doesn't necessarily have to happen in this way. Pfizer can easily fade from this upper level. And that is often what is a more probabilistic event. But in the case where things start to break apart, usually when something breaks, like the option market expected move, or in the case of some of those other underlyings which had more explosive gamma squeezes as of late, you want to be thinking things like car and stocks that have just rallies. The option market can drive a lot of that activity, but short term, what it can lead to is a bit of a directional bias. If we get into those upper prints, if you see the tape starting to accelerate to the upside, know that you may be involved inside of a gamma squeeze. And that gamma squeeze often is quite challenging to fade because ultimately there's no technical levels, there's no bias towards the upside. The markets are simply hedging off their risk until people are taking their respective profits. So, interesting name, interesting move inside of the past week. It's definitely one of our stronger healthcare names. And when you look at the healthcare ETF that I often use, let's see, fundamentals. Just note that it is one of the larger holdings. It's not United Healthcare or J&J size, but it is third on the list. And no matter where you look, that healthcare strength is ever present. UNH, of course, another strong name both for healthcare and for the Dow as we are nearing that 500 print. So with that said, I believe that's the end of our weekly session. Keep in mind that the market may be a bit exhaustive from yesterday's rally. We're often going to be looking to see if it can pull back, maybe confirm some value zones before continuing forward. What that would look like is just a short-term back test of something as simple as that 470 print. The SPY were to do that, that would be a bit of a deeper correction intraday, but ultimately that would be representing a daily back test. Also note that our VPOC still sits below. So as we are extended, know that this is where short-term bears or short plays are often at their best. So yes, the bullish activity looks great. We have broken out. If we are moving away from value, just know that it's quite impulsive. At which point, if it does continue to do that, you can expect sort of that gamma exposure to hit the market in different ways. Not only key underlying stocks, but even the S&P itself. And if you're looking for targets, I would say for the SPX, we have our upper bound, which having trouble just showing. Oops. Give me a moment. I am struggling with my tool. We have this upper bound at about 47.92. So if you're looking for the market to do a full expected move transition, this could be a possible upward target for the market as we get into new all-time highs. So with that said, my name is Jared. This is Engineering the Markets. Trade safe. We'll see how the market responds over the next few sessions. Coming into Monday, we'll look and see what other effects this announcement has had across other asset classes, and ultimately looking for some longer term potential into the end of the year and maybe looking a bit ahead into next year. So trade safe. We'll talk more then. Stay tuned for pre-market prep.
All right. Hey, how's it going, everybody? Good morning, Norm. How are you doing today, brother? Hey, good morning, Eric. How's it going, buddy? Hey, good morning. How's it going?
Morning, Thor.
Hey, good morning, buddy. All right. So getting rolling this morning. I don't still might have a delay on your cam today. I'm not
Yeah,
sure.
it's. I turned it off. It's not working
I
right.
don't even get what's going on with that thing. That delay is so ridiculous. I was on with vMix support last night. I'll work on that some more this afternoon. So hey everybody, YouTube out there. Carlos is on vacation, Manesh. We try not to let him go on vacation. I argue against it constantly, yet he gets to. I don't really understand, but he does. So, we're gonna go ahead and get started. How was your day yesterday, Norm?
It was good. I took a nice short on AMC, or AMD, excuse me, right from the top. Got I think $4 out of it in total, so can't complain about
Nice,
that.
nice, very good. Yeah, I got a really nice short in Roku yesterday. Got a good chunk of that big sell. Was feeling really good about myself, and then saw that Ed Martin traded it better. But what are you gonna do?
Yeah.
Let's see here. Let's go ahead and get over to take a little look at our gappers list here today, and then we'll take a look at the market, and then we'll get into looking at some different stuff. All right.
Yeah,
So you can
I
see
mean,
what.
I was just gonna say, SPY yesterday. Obviously, we had the FOMC announcement 2 o'clock. Jerome Powell press conference at 2:30. There were some decent moves after that. Ended up pretty decent. Up 2/3% on SPY right now, just over a 0.5% on NASDAQ. If you would hop over to the slide that has all of the
Yep,
economic data dropping today,
coming at you.
we've got initial jobless claims, continuing claims at 8:30, building permits and housing starts at 8:30 as well. That just all came out, well as Philly Fed Manufacturing Index. 9:15, we've got industrial production index capacity utilization at 945. I believe it's blank there because the list is so long it can't take all of it. But you've got market services PMI and market manufacturing PMI at 945.
I
So
got a
coming out
lot
today,
going on.
nothing coming out tomorrow. I think most of the market's going to hinge on what took place yesterday and see how that settles out as we move forward. So
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we can definitely see like with our spy here. Look at the. I mean, once that information came out, we had quite the buy up on the spy, which was we were talking about this yesterday that we kind of had this indecision range, and if we broke back above, could turn out to be a really good day if the news came in. And sure enough, that happened. Today we find ourselves gapped up, sitting right at kind of an extension of the range near my R6. So this is going to be a very interesting place to see how the market responds generically. As I would look at this, I'd kind of look at this potential for having potential for either breaking out or doing a doing kind of a reverse to pull back, like Jared was saying, in engineering the markets, maybe come down to test 470. So we can't just assume we're going to get run in here. We might come down and set up, maybe have a choppy open, and then start doing something a little later in the day. But we'll have to keep an eye on that. So we do have quite the gappers list today, and different things coming out here. You can see on the gap upside, we have quite a few names here that I think we'd recognize. Not as much to the downside, maybe a couple here and there. So I'm going to go ahead here and start knocking through the list. I'm going to do this a little bit different. Since we have so many, I'm going to go through the list and just kind of hammer through. If there's notable news or something, Norm will throw it in there for me. So we have Calt, C-A-L-T here, floats 15.2 million with a around 700 market cap. Not bad.
It's a Swedish biotech. I mean, usually these companies out of Europe trade terribly. Biotech, less than 20 million shares float. I'll probably steer clear of it just because of that.
Yeah, fair enough. I like that. Frey, which is
Once
Frey
again,
or
this
battery?
one's out of Luxembourg. Trades like garbage as well.
I like this. We can do this. We can get through the list real fast this way. BC, Bria Cell Therapeutics popping up. Little on the 11 mil, a little on the low float side. Let's see. I mean, pattern-wise looks nice. I like to move the VWAP, the bounce from S5. I mean, that gapping up. We've got some news. The only thing I really don't like is it looks like it's heavier to the downside, so it might pull back to R4 to test in the open. If you're in the low float area that
No
you
shares
like
for
these,
short for me, not IB.
yeah, that's probably the same for me. Yeah. The only thing we're missing is shares for short, so keep that in mind on this one if you're on IB. Go EV, Canoe Inc. Don't really love the daily on this one, to be honest. It actually has decent form, but the candles are very, very narrow, so this stock doesn't seem to move a lot during the day. Maybe on its real catalyst days, which maybe it has today, floats almost 100 million, which is getting a little bit bigger. We do have shares for short, but I don't know. This one might be worth keeping on.
They increased production guidance.
So that's not bad fundamental. Let's get rid of these. One of these days I'll get as fast as Carlos at this stuff. Not really. All right, let's do that. We'll come back and look at that one. AMC on the list. AMC had an interesting day yesterday. It sold off pretty heavy, but then bought right back up and closed almost at its opening price. So that was a very interesting buy-up signal there. Heavy volume on the day before as well. So this could be that inflection point that Jared was talking about. But if we can get above S4 here, I definitely would look for AMC to potentially squeeze. It was on my list yesterday, and I know a couple people had some plays on this, so we'll have to see how it looks out. Anything notable there, or just doing its AMC thing?
Meme.
Memeing it up. What did Brian say? What does he call them? Anyway, ARVL Arrival. Interesting. Daily chart. I do not like it at all. Pre-market chart. Don't like it at all.
The second I see Luxembourg, I run.
Moving on. Run away. Plug Power. Oh wow, Plug Power's held 51% by institutions now. They're really in that one. We got Plug Power here. Plug Power can trade well on certain days. I do find this hammer doji down at the extension of this range really nice and interesting today, gapped up a little bit. Need a little bit more volume in the pre-market, but otherwise, I mean, might be worth looking at a little closer to the open to see what happens. Roblox did not end up trading well today, but did bounce shy of VWAP, which we were kind of thinking may happen. Got some good volume in there too. So if you're looking to play this one, this might be a nice buy area as responsive bulls start coming in off of this new candle high. Be interested to see what happens. It does have a little order flow coming in as well, and we have shorts for available, but it is on SSR. Why is it on SSR? Oh, 2 days, because it was gapped down yesterday. It carries for 2 days. So still on SSR from yesterday. So you got to keep that in mind. Going to be a little bit more difficult to trade. I'll call that one a secondary item at best for now. Sophie Technologies, or Sophie, depending on who you're talking about. Pre-market action looks very algo block kind of look to it. Fair float. Really big market cap. Jumping up after a buy candle. It's not great, but if it's got something interesting, we do have shares for short. But this one doesn't trade well for me. Yeah, I've tried this one before. I couldn't really get a good trade out of it. Freeport McMoran, interesting. Do not like the daily chart just at first glance. I don't like something about the way these candles are all structured really tightly and then big moves down. I feel like that's not going to trade well. Pre-market value. Let's go back a day and just look. I mean, it didn't trade too bad yesterday, but not too great either. So I don't know. Not wouldn't be my first. We can throw this down on a secondary item if we end up being short on things to look at, which I don't think we're going to be. Some names coming up that I really like to trade here in a couple of minutes. So we have DKNG. DraftKings has been a ticker that I've managed to trade pretty well. DraftKings, I've been waiting for it to bounce because it's been selling down from VWAP for a very long time. I mean, you're talking about a stock that was $70, now down around $20. Got some volume in, making a new high. I like DKNG today. I'll probably be watching this. The only thing we're missing now is some good volume in the morning. We are gapping, but we're not doing it with a lot of volume yet. So we're going to need to be patient and wait for everyone to come in on this one. We do got
be careful.
shorts.
A lot of that volume is in a block trade.
Mm-hmm.
Transaction that occurred right there that was recorded at 8 a.m. So it needs to get consistent volume. Right now, it's only trading a couple hundred to a couple thousand shares a minute. So
Yeah,
I mean, I'm seeing
exactly.
a lot of volume in there with less than 1,000 shares going through in a minute. You can't trade that kind of order flow.
Yeah, for sure. You definitely have to wait for it to open and make sure it's in play. Agreed. So wise words from the man. Let's see here. Hut just jumped in front of Delta, so I guess we'll look at Hut. Hut 8 mining. I don't trade this one ever. Pre-market doesn't look great, but I mean, if you're into kind of these mining companies and stuff like that, might offer something for you. Float's fine. So otherwise, we do got shares for short, but this one generically does not trade very well for me. Although, I mean, you can see tradable ranges yesterday, so it could trade. Delta, I often get some nice plays out of Delta, or I did. I have noticed lately it hasn't played as well, and now you can kind of see why. The average candle on Delta is actually quite narrow, so this stock can be very tricky to play. And as you can see, look at these prior couple of days. Keep that in mind, right? So Delta does have the ability just to be very choppy.
Excuse me.
So
Sorry.
we'll have to keep an eye on that. Actually, just seeing that daily chart, I'm gonna, even though it's on the gappers, I'm gonna put Delta on secondary. Affirm has been hitting the gappers pretty much every day. Affirm set a really nice value range here, setting a VPOC at 106. Big indecision candle with some volume after a buy up candle. Yesterday bought up back at S3. This is a nice tradable range for the back to the top of this daily range. So I actually like this one just to Affirm, just to keep an eye on today. I'll put it on my secondary. And see if we make that new high, if we get some buyers. Affirm, very interesting business model, and I think there's people interested in this thing long term, so it might be a good opportunity, might pop up there. X, this
Like a digital pawn shop.
exactly. X, every time I see X, I still think of this YouTube video that William did a long time ago that had the song X Gonna Give It To You. I don't know if you remember that one. But every time I see this stock, that song pops into my head. You can see X is popping up a little bit. I know we have some related numbers coming out today, so it might be something to keep an eye on to see if when those other which numbers were, is like a consumer one or numbers come out, that could affect X a bit, and it could cause them to move a little bit. So we'll have to keep an eye on them. Neo charging in. So Neo is interesting on the daily with this big buy up candle that it had yesterday. I mean, we sold down, but then it kind of bought up, kind of closed near the open price with some volume. It kind of did that a few days ago as well. So Neo seems to be attempting to support here, off of $30. So the only issue is there's not a lot of long-term demand in any of these right now because of what Norm's been pointing out and the delisting and certain stuff. It's putting a lot of pressure on any of the stocks in that market. So will it bounce? I don't know, but it's certainly an interesting candle there. volume in the it is getting some volume in the pre-market, although not enough for Neo. Neo throws a lot of volume, so this is actually really light volume for Neo, but certainly worth taking a look at a little later to see if it wakes up a bit. All right, that hits. I think that hits the gap up. We don't have nearly as much on our gap down. IRNT, which is IronNet, probably won't look at this one too intently. The morning action doesn't look great. We do have a gap down, $5 stock though.
We had earnings last night.
Ooh, we do have a catalyst. Oh look, the TI actually pops in an earnings thing. That's cool. I didn't even notice that. So we did have earnings on it. So if you're looking to play it's 30 million float, but if you're looking to play a lower price stock, I mean, it does have a fair catalyst. The only thing, again, and I'll say this kind of as a theme as you guys are checking stocks for stocks you want to play, one thing I really like to look at is just the average amount the stock moves. Every now and again you get a big day where the stock goes crazy, but most days the stock moves very little. And for a $7 stock, you're going to need a little bit more than that unless you're just going to take crazy shares, and you don't want to do that on these kind of stocks because that's how you lose crazy money. Don Emir, we'll just call them DNMR for ease. 88 mil float. Looks like we're holding above $9. It does have some pre-market volume.
They're offering some private convertible notes. A private offering on this. I don't know that it's worth a squat. I mean, it's just being diluted a little bit, and that'll cause it to drop. I don't think this is one that'll trade well.
Okay, fair enough. I'll agree with you on that one. It definitely wouldn't be a stock I would have on my list, so I agree. BKKT Holdings. Been on a steady meh trend for quite a while. Did buy up a little bit similar level, but now back down, making lows. Doesn't look fantastic in the pre-market. And then last but not least, we have Adobe. Adobe is a stock I have traded before, but it is very expensive and runs a very wide spread. I don't know what it is right now, but let's see.
Yeah, it can be tough to.
Yeah, it's got a buck spread
it's a buck right now, but that's actually not even that bad for it. It can move quite a bit. You really got to mind share size. They do have a catalyst. They had earnings last night. If you're into this kind of thing, then could be a good one. But I probably will not be on my list. It just I've traded it before, and it can tend to move wildly, even if it does have good direction over the term of that trend or that move, it will go against you enough to inflict some pain and make you second guess what you're doing is my issue with it.
Yeah, and that is such a pain. There's a lot of I've noticed a lot of stocks that have a habit of doing that too, like Uber, for instance. It can be a good stock to trade, but even though it's less price, but for some reason that stock retraces more than it should. So it's very difficult to actually nail an entry on it without getting stopped out multiple times. So, cool. Well, that's really awesome. So, 850, we're doing pretty good here. We got through the gappers. Why don't we go ahead and grab? You want to go ahead? We'll knock out our announcements, and then I'll grab
let's do
some
that.
stuff
Then
from
we
the
can go. Let's do it that way because as we get closer to the open, I think we'll have better opportunity to see what'll be tradable.
Yeah, let's do that.
And some of the people in the community can find some things to discuss.
Let me get this queued up for you here. All right, coming at you.
All right. Jared's gap trading webinar has been postponed. He wasn't feeling well, so we'll announce a new date for that. Then Eamon's trend trading webinar will be next Tuesday, 5 p.m. Eastern. Note the special time because of his time zone. Speaking of, Kreda also didn't feel well. So her webinar from last night will be postponed and rescheduled for a future date. She is still scheduled for next Wednesday, 5 p.m. Eastern, talking about taking the pain out of trading part 2, assessing impact, FOMO, and overtrading. Just a reminder, charity of the month is Shriners Children's Hospitals. We'll be donating all Super Chat, Super Sticker revenue to them this month. And don't forget about StockTradingSimulator.com. It is the replay simulator. We've developed a web-based application. You don't have to download anything. You can just go over there and check it out. Also, while you're there, don't forget to sign up for the homework assignments down at the bottom right that you can receive twice a week from Eamon and Simon. If you are watching on YouTube and you haven't been in the chat, you can use the promo code PREMARKET24 to get a discount off the no obligation trial membership. Just go to BearbullTraders.com. Scroll about halfway down the page so you see that test drive now button. Click it, fill out the info, use the promo code. It will bill you one time. It does not recur. It gives you 7 calendar days, 5 trading days in the chat room to try out the community and see if it's a good fit for you. Also, if you'd like to become an elite member, you can use the promo code HOLIDAYS40 to get an annual elite membership that also includes 1 month of DAS Simulator included.
Excellent. Thank you, sir, for going through all of that. Just a small announcement too, just for myself to everyone in the room and anyone who does. Tonight's mentoring session is actually going to be rescheduled as well. I do them every Thursday night, but tonight's I'm actually not going to be at, which I already announced to the room and everyone else. But it is my anniversary, so 15th year anniversary today. So I'm going to be taking the wife out tonight. So we're going to be having a good time. Thanks, man. Really appreciate it. Been together since 2003. Married since 06. If you guys follow me on Twitter at Thor Young, I posted a couple of wedding photos on there for anyone who's just interested in seeing how what I looked like when in 2006.
Oh goodness. I have not seen it yet. I'll go check it out.
So, all right. So let's get into this. So looking at the SPY real quick, and then if you guys have some tickers from the room and YouTube you all want to throw at me, go ahead and queue those up. I'll get going on those as well. For now, let's take a look at the SPY. SPY has been setting. I got a 15-minute chart here on the top side. SPY has been sitting at the kind of this range here up at the top after gapping a bit this morning. And you can see here on the daily, obviously we're at a kind of a really extreme area on the range. I marked the high from the 22nd and bring that across, and you can see how that's cutting right through the middle of where we are right now. So what I'm kind of expecting to see here is, really need a move from pre-market high if we're going to confirm a breakout today. So pre-market high for SPY will be something I will be paying attention to. Previous day's close, which sits very close to pre-market low, right? That's going to be the next line in the sand right there, which is right down here, right? I'm going to be paying attention to that. So this is kind of our indecision range on SPY, and we're going to probably chop in here a bit at the open, and then picking a direction from there should give us a lot of information about what we're going to do on the day. But we need to wait for that, especially on a day like today where we can be very indecisive. So let's go ahead and take a look at a couple of the tickers that have been loading up in the room here. Let me get some new rows going. New rows. All right. All right, we got Apple. We got Apple again because it didn't go down. AMD. Nvidia.
I'm going to go long your 2006 sideburns, homie.
Ah! For sure with the goatee. Man, I was rocking the goat before it was greatest of all time, right? It was fun though. We got married in Phoenix, in the Chase building. What was where the reception was. On the top floor is just all glass, and you could just see all Phoenix. You could see the sunset. It was so nice. All right, let's check out Apple here. Why am I not loading? AMD, Apple, Nvidia, Apple. Did I misspell it? I misspelled it.
AAPL.
I know. I was saying thank.
I've done that before. Of course, it's not as bad. I mentioned this. I don't even Thor. I don't know if you remember this. This was a couple years ago.
There we go.
It was well before Corona or any of that. And I went to the grocery store with my wife, and I was at the self checkout, and it's like type in item, and I spelled Apple AAPLE, and my wife thought I was an idiot.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing.
I had to explain to her what was going on. It was just out of habit.
Oh my god, anyway. That's amazing. So, segue. DJ asked, how did I convince my wife that you're going to become a day trader? So, believe it or not, my wife convinced me. Actually, when I was thinking about trading and I was learning how to trade on the Robinhood app, my wife bought me Andrew's book. So I started day trading because of Andrew's book, but it was actually my wife that bought his book off of Amazon and gave it to me and said, you know what? You're not that dumb. Give it a try. Right. But yeah, so I thought that was a fun one. So, all right, now we got Apple typed in right. I'm going to take a look at it. So Apple, when that news came in yesterday, right at 2 o'clock, notice the rally we had with a lot of volume, right? So Apple really had a strong push going into the close yesterday, and we need to kind of respect the power of that push and see what happens. Now, Apple this morning finds itself ranging right in a value area. So notice how my pivots are set up here in the middle. Notice VPOC is sitting right there. I mean, that's because, this is value. So on a wider range like this, actually the SPY may be, Apple and the SPY, but tech, these may be very, very choppy. We may end up just ranging between R3 and S3 for a little bit and then see if we break. If we get all the way to R3, I'm actually probably would be looking for shorts. Because I on a day like today, I would not expect another large breakout. But we'll have to see and play it. Apple has been on a steady uptrend for quite a while. And there's lots of companies that make a lot less money than Apple that are valued at a lot higher. So, we'll see what happens. You never know when this thing... I know Jared's talked often about Apple is in a certain location relative to options that could cause it to have a gamma squeeze if it gets an aggressive enough rally at a point in time. So that could still be... that could still happen. And I agree, Topher, because Apple's kind of becoming almost a cult stock now, right? Think Tesla before and think others. As people really start to love this one and buy into it, and they're willing to hold it and not sell it, it helps that push. All right, AMD was awesome yesterday. I know Norm got a good piece of AMD yesterday. AMD, we were calling this out at the pre-market that we were extended in the range, and it was looking to make a new high in the pre-market, and this was one of the ones, if the market rallied at all, we were kind of calling would be a one to keep an eye on. And sure enough, it ended up, especially after the news came in at 2 o'clock, this thing was a straight ripper. I should have hung out at 2. I have to go pick up my daughter at 2 o'clock, so I'm never around when these 2 o'clock minute plays happen like this. But I got to start remembering and making time for them, because I definitely could have gotten something going on here. Or shorted and got something. I don't know. Nvidia did the same thing as AMD. Came down and tested that lower range. It was poised the same way as AMD, and it had almost an identical day. It had a little bit of a push in the morning, but chopped. And then when that announcement came out, big rally. So we're going to have to see what happens here after these. We can't just make an assumption that we're going to go on a full run, but, we had really solid volume the day before. Buy-up came on solid volume for what we'd expect for that candle. So, if Nvidia, if that price range works for you in the spread, it certainly might offer some opportunities. All right, so let's pop back up to some of our ones we were looking at earlier off the gappers. AMC, as we were talking about, breaking back above after making this move. The one thing I don't like about AMC right now as far as this move goes is this second day candle. With all of the FOMC or all of those meetings and everything, we did manage to go on a little bit of a rally on AMC yesterday, but the volume in that rally was not spectacular. And that is something to be said about the lack of enthusiasm that came in for the stock as that happened. For AMC, it's opening up central range. I'd actually look for it to rally in a bit and then short. I think it'll reject S4 or VWAP on the daily. So maybe you rally towards 27 and then have an all-day fade. But we'll see. We did have some good volume down here. Just that next day's volume didn't seem to support this thing having a dramatic rally today. But we'll see. Maybe it'll surprise us. Plug Power kind of doing had a really nice rally to close the day off. Gapped a bit today. Now finds itself chopping the central range. One thing I can already tell that I'm going to not get a good opening trade most likely, because every single stock that I'm looking at right now is opening up in the middle of the pivot range, which means we're kind of close to a value range or a value area. And that for me, it doesn't work for me. I'm too close to the price or value there. So choppiness and getting stopped out is just way too likely. So I have to wait for all of these stocks to either rally and break out or rally and sell. But I need to let them get to an extreme before I'm willing to trade. If you guys follow Eamon and Simon's pinpoints, right, this can kind of help you in that concept too, right? Is that those trades are often based upon the stock getting to an extreme and then taking a trade off of that extreme. I'm going to toss PFE on here. Juan G called it out in the room. Good call. I do want to keep an eye on PFE. I know Jared was talking about some gamma exposure on PFE, which could cause a significant rally to come out of this. Now, generically, PFE is not a stock I like to trade during the day. But if with that kind of news plus the strong rally it had yesterday, it may be worth looking at. Now, when I say a strong rally, this is what I'm talking about, right? Look at the daily here. We have on the 13th, we have good volume. The next day, we drop a little bit as we consolidate, and then the next day, strong volume again as we push. That is a really pretty pattern, you know, in the way that the volume is setting up on those candles. The question is today, do we continue to push towards 60, or are we going to kind of do what we did 2 sessions ago, which is where we're going to sell off a little bit, retest? Not really sure where that happens, but again, in the central range. So I'm going to need to let this thing rally or sell before I'm going to be able to make a decision on it. All right, let's see here. 9 o'clock. I'm doing really good on time. Let's go ahead and take a look at NEO and see what's going on there. Any other tickers you guys want me to queue up? Go ahead and throw those in there. We can take a look at a few. Because I still have about 15 minutes. NEO yesterday was a party. We had quite a few of our membership, got a great trade on NEO. It was one of those stocks where, let me go to a 1-minute chart so you can kind of see it a little bit better. It was just an absolute pleasure to play. It got a little congested here at the open, and this is one of those reasons we talk about why you don't need to rush into these. Actually, quite often rushing in is how you end up taking a lot of stops, right? You just let this thing set, let it find its range, and then you can see it broke that downside range, back tested pre-market low, and then we started getting our move down. Now the problem with NEO, and it has been doing this lately, right, is NEO has been trading slowly lately. I know a lot of us are used to NEO being a very aggressive stock, but lately NEO's personality has changed quite a bit. Now, personality, what do you mean? Well, remember, stocks are this is a market environment, right? And stocks are made up of participants, people that are trading. And as those traders change and the type of participation changes, right, from more institutional to more retail, the personality of the stock and the way it trades also changes, because the way it trades is a direct reflection of the type of participation it receives. So one thing you can notice on NEO now is NEO is now starting to move in very notable ranges, right? And you need to pay attention to this because it makes the stock more difficult to trade, because you're going to get chops and then moves, chops, moves, chops, moves, right? And that's okay as long as you can get in and recognize what's happening. But what happens is a lot of people, you'll get short here and then you get afraid because it pulls back up. But you need to understand it's trading ranges a lot. So as long as you're respecting those ranges, either the success or failure of them on stocks like NEO, you'll do well. But you have to be patient, because those traverses to your next price targets will take 15 to 30 minutes each cycle before you get the move that you're looking to get, right? So just, you got to keep that in mind with these guys. They require more patience once they get like this.
Even regardless of the institutional ownership, if you look at the trading volume in NEO, it's declined greatly from the time in which we were trading it on a daily basis. I don't even know if it's trading a third of the volume that it traded when it was really good back in the day.
Yeah, and I'll show you that actually on the daily. Let me show you what Norm's talking about, because he's 100% right. So notice back here and before 2021, right? Look at the volume. You're talking days with, almost 500 million shares, right, in one day traded, or average of like a quarter of a billion shares traded per day per average. Now our average day is 50 million, right?
Yeah. These
So
things change.
difference.
I mean, it's just like how we used to trade MU all the time, and now it's terrible on many days. So it happens.
Exactly. So, all right. Oh, man, yeah, it's good stuff. All right, so Ford. Everyone's saying Ford's got some info. What were we saying? Earnings or something like that? What were we saying about Ford? Oh well, we'll look at it. Elsid's the new Neo. That sounds like a T-shirt waiting to happen. But I agree. Although it trades more erratically. All right, let's get back over to today. All right, Ford looking very blocky, algo-y to start off the day, which is not unusual for Ford. We do have shares for short, which is good. Right now, we have a large order on Ford sitting at 2017, and it's a NYSE order. So we're going to have to keep an eye on that order because it's probably going to gain priority. I would not, if you're looking for Ford for a breakout today, I would let it come back and test that order before you decide to go long. But the level 2 otherwise to the top side, actually quite a bit of selling activity listed to the top side. So if Ford can get going top side, it certainly has plenty of ladder there for the run to occur. But this lingering large bid back at 2017 is going to gravitate my attention. I need to see that rectified. Now, one thing I do believe with that order is that 2017 sits probably, yep, I was right. It sits right underneath previous day's close. Right, so PDC is going to be in play on Ford. If it starts to sell, you're going to want to see it hit that order and then respect PDC, make a new high. Probably got yourself a good long run there if that occurs. But you're going to need to let that happen first and let that sell happen. If not, going long before that's probably not a great idea. BAC, sure. All right, BAC. I was noticing Citigroup as well. Actually, had an interesting look to its chart today. I'll take a look at that. BAC never has great volume in the pre-market. It always looks very super algo. So that's nothing to be unexpected. It is a NYSE stock as well. We have shorts available. So that is good. Now we are finding ourselves on BAC opening in an interesting part of the range that I like. Cam range, we actually find ourselves in a pretty tight range, and we find ourselves near R4, but we actually rejected pre-market high, which is yesterday's R3. But if we can set up here on R4, we definitely are poised for a breakout. I look for breakouts off of R4. We have a narrower cam range. We have a R4 potential. I like that. We do have sellers listed to the top side, which I like that. So we'll just have to get a little closer to the open and see how this thing comes in. And then if you noticed, Citi is kind of poised similarly. It has a similar... Now, Citi, I really loved how we had 2 tests of this extreme range at $60, now making a new high, right? So I think Jared in Engineering the Markets had mentioned something about banks and keeping an eye on those today. So we'll have to... might be worth, keeping a little eye out there. Let's see, over to YouTube. Ruby, you wanted MGI. So MGI, earnings date the 16th. So we have earnings. No, that's Adobe. Sorry. It didn't pop over. MGI. There we go. There we go. All right. Yeah, no earnings. Okay, great. MGI, 81 mil float. Average true range is 54 cents. So you got to keep that in mind, right? So this is what I was talking about. How much can you expect? This is a $7, $8 stock that only moves 54 cents on average per day, right? So we want to keep that in mind. Low short float, 70% held by institutions. So Moneygram, very institutional. It did have this really lovely bounce off of VWAP and value recently, which I really liked. I love this back test of R4 and a volume coming in to ignite it. So daily chart wise, actually, I love it. It actually looks pretty nice. This though is what happened yesterday. This big move here. And before that, it traded horribly. Big move here, and then after that, sold off a bit. Big drop. So it looks like this thing does the majority of its movement early on most of the time, but that news when it came out, the meeting notes they came out went pretty big there. Pre-market right now has 0 order flow. So I really can't give you any advice on it otherwise for the day. One thing I can say is we find ourselves opening near value, right in the middle of the range. Now that's very, very important to note, because if you're in the middle of the range and this thing only moves 54 cents or so a day, right? That is basically from here to here, right? And you're right in the middle. So this is where I talk about allowing the stock to come to an extreme. If you want to trade this one, you're going to need to let it sell down and either long it off the low range, or you're going to need to let it rally and then try and short it off the high range. But any trades in this middle area here is going to be very, very difficult to pull off. Especially, but if the order flow comes in, maybe you see something on the level 2 that gives you an idea. But otherwise, not seeing a whole lot there. Apple sitting at previous day's close right now. When we looked at it earlier, we were talking about we were losing VWAP and moving towards that. We were talking about the liquidity on the level 2, which was there. So it'll be interesting to see how Apple responds on the daily. Apple had high volume into R5. Now it's rejecting 180, right? So this will be very interesting to keep an eye on Apple to see what it does. Yesterday, we obviously had that really big buy up that happened once those minutes came in. But just remember, just because there was a huge buy up doesn't mean we're going long, right? I mean, there could have been a whole bunch of, short covers that started that could have caused something similar. So you never really know what happened in the market, but we'll have to keep an eye on that for sure. All right, what do you got, Casey? Docu? I'll do a few more, and then we'll roll this thing out. So Docu for me, Casey, has been stuck in this really ever since it had this big candle on the 3rd, this like volume engulfing wise, but just kind of a narrow candle otherwise, it has not been able to get out of the range of that candle. So check it out. This is what I mean. Look at the top of this candle, bam. Look at the bottom of this candle, bam. Right? Look, it's just stuck in there. So it's tried to break out of it one time, but look, it even ended up closing that day, right exact at that same level. So Docu for me is not really a viable trade idea until that changes. Where basically we found value for the time being and we're chopping it and consolidating it. Knowing how tight this range is right now, if you were going to play it, I would actually be looking for a move back down to value. Right, but that's going to be, that is a $14 move potentially on something like Docu. But with its spread and, the way it moves, it still may prove to be a little challenging. Yeah, yellow line is VPOC off the volume by price study. So we'll have to see what that goes. That's a solid point too, Matt W. And this is what we talk about the personality of the stock, right? If you go back to Docu, one thing you can notice is Docu often has morning rallies, right, where it will rally the open and then sell, right? So, but it rallies the open and then sells almost every day, and that's what's causing this choppy action. We will open, we will rally, and then we will sell and then buy up a little bit, right? We open, rally a small amount, and then sell, buy up, open, rally, sell. You know what I mean? It just kind of keeps doing it over and over again. So, maybe we retest 150 and then sell down to 135 today. Who knows? But very hard to trade otherwise. That's interesting, Sammy. I did not know that. So Sammy is saying Docu was downgraded by some institutions today, which isn't surprising. I know it was downgraded before, so additional downgrades could help. Right now, we are sitting on S4, which is a breakdown level, so could be worth looking at if you can get a little bit more volume to come in on it. Rahil, BB. Let's look at BB, which is Blackberry. Earnings are approaching on Blackberry on the 21st after the close. Blackberry, very large float, obviously. 40% held by institutions. Spread running tight at 2 cents. We do have shorts for available on IB. Blackberry is trading in the $9 range. There is something actually on the daily chart that immediately jumps out for me as being interesting on Blackberry. I do love this candle right here. But we're seeing a lot of these today because of the minutes yesterday. So I don't know how much credence I can give this candle, but I do like that we've bought and supported kind of this range here over and over again. We kind of dipped down lower in it. Didn't really get a lot of volume there. and then yesterday bought up heavy. Today we're gapped above. If you're looking for an opportunity on Blackberry, this could be it, because you certainly find yourself moving back above. However, kind of like I said before, we find ourselves chopping the center of the range, which means we're close to value from yesterday, right? So which means we're going to need to accept and then reject value, and this tight range is going to be very difficult. So if you're looking to go long, I'd recommend letting it sell off first, and try and get long off of a lower area, maybe around 8. I mean, there's not much of the downside, so maybe let it go down to like 880, 870. Top side looks a little lean, except to 950 showing strong. If it rallies and it rallies to 950, you may look for a short play off of the failure to break out, because R3 is still really far away, and these are some really wide cams. So I'm not expecting a breakout on Blackberry today. I'd expect it to be ranged and stay inside. So probably maybe we rally up to 950, which would put it near R4, and then we reject that and sell back the range. It is 9:16, so I think let's do one more out of the room because they said please. And I can't resist the word please. ACN, which is Accenture. We can see here that we have a massive gap on the daily. Now this stock, I'll be honest with you, Suraj, not my cup of tea. Generically, you're talking about a $400 stock. And I have a feeling its spread is aggressive. Yeah, $1.20 spread on this guy. We do have shares for short on IB, so that is a bonus. I would want to see the order flow on ACN normalize a little bit. Right now in the pre-market, we're still seeing some very sporadic volume where it's coming in bursts and blocks, but you're not just seeing that regular order flow that you would like to see, right? So but if we can get some good orders to come in here, we'd be good. Other thing to note, ACN is really outside of its range already. So we've kind of gapped out of range. Now we could keep going, but we could gap fill very, very easily. So we do have shares for short, so that could be an opportunity. But you're going to have to keep an idea, maybe let this thing shake out for 10 or 15, and then pick a direction on it once it comes in. All right, I'm going to go ahead and give you guys the moderators' watch lists, and then we will call this thing a pre-market. So first off, coming in. Oh, we don't have a lot of lists in yet. There we go. We're coming in. All right. Dima, who is ready to trade, is coming in rolling hot with AMC, Plug, AMD, and Apple. Can't fault that watch list at all. I believe all 4 of those are probably going to be on my list today. Peter's throwing out the IPOs. We have IMMX, BNOX, and NXGL. Not sure if any of that's notable, but there it is. And then more SPACs, and more SPACs, EMLDU, CFF, SU, and ADRTU. I personally have a rule, and that rule is if your ticker has more than 4 letters, I will not trade it. And this is why. Peter's watch list, AMD, Apple, LCID, secondary, he's going to be checking out Roku, PFE, and F. I really like that beat on PFE. I think I'm going to be doing the same. Same there. For me, I believe I'm going to be watching. I'm personally going to keep an eye out. All right, Jonathan. Exception to every rule. But you know what? It didn't do great. I'm gonna watch Apple. I am gonna watch AMC and PFE. I also am gonna throw LCID on there for a little spice in my life with some AMD. And I think that'll make my list. It looks like Jared is coming in with Apple, AMC, PFE as well, and some Tesla. Jared basically owns part of Tesla because he's traded that stock so many times. He basically just calls Elon. Elon tells him where he's going to move the price that day. Then Jared and him make evil laughs as the price moves there. Long Dogecoin, by the way, right? Or something. Isn't that happening right now? Isn't Elon like long Dogecoin today? But he'll be short it tomorrow. So anyway, just buy. Just buy all. All right, everybody. I'm going to go ahead and call that a pre-market show. I really appreciate everybody coming by and hanging out with us today. If you had a good time and enjoyed the information you got from Engineering the Markets and from the pre-market today, please do us a little favor. Go ahead and throw us a like, subscribe to the channel, and ring that bell. We do have tomorrow coming up. Just a reminder, Engineering the Markets is not on Friday, so we will be starting at 8:30, not 8 o'clock. And we will be going on and getting the best stuff to close out the week. So hope everyone has a great day. And as always, y'all, have a good one. Peace.